Then Ramaphosa should lead a breakaway party. This was done for all registered voters. We don't think he will. He won't lead a break. It's the last thing he'll do is lead a breakaway party. He'll try to unite his party. But we asked this to detect something else. 60% of ANC voters said that would be a great idea. Now that is quite something. And disagreeing in the ANC, what would that be? That's about 10 plus 20. 1 in 3 ANC voters would oppose the idea of the great reformer saying, to hell with the rest of you, I'm leading us into the future and we're going to do things differently by making some of these concessions. That shows how far, it's the same point that you've got this yearning in the voter base for something new. The opposition's finding it very difficult. It's almost if you're in business or you sell a product or something, you've got all these consumers who don't like the product they're using. They want something new, but no entrepreneur can seize the market. It's almost impossible, but it's happening in our politics. Then, this is the modeling of the consequences. Okay, so what's happened here is a long, complicated question. But you sort of try and make this real. So there's been all this infighting in the ANC, and Ramaphosa sort of valiantly trying to save the party, and I can't remember how we did it. The RET guys are getting in his way, and so the ANC splits in two. And Ramaphosa gallantly goes on his way. He leads a breakout. He starts a new party, which will save South Africa. And as key ANC leaders join him in that, they sort of line up behind him, and this is new. The faction that remains behind is the sort of Zuma faction of the sort of RET types. Now we're going to have an election, and how are you going to vote if this is the reality? Let's go. Let's start with the ANC. 39% of ANC voters say they're going with Ramaphosa. 35% say they're staying with what they've come to know, and 15% say they're moving on. So this moment is going to be reached for us, whereas the Ramaphosa effect is removed. He's removed from the ANC in due course. His successors aren't that popular. The socio-economic trends continue to work against the party. We're going to have a sort of ANC election result where the party's down in the 30s. Amongst all the global figure, 27% vote for Ramaphosa, 25% for what remains of the ANC, 40% for the rest of the opposition. And the availables, 33% go to Ramaphosa. And look at that, 24% are going to stay in the ANC. These are an available market to the opposition. And even after Ramaphosa goes, they're going to stay inside the ANC. And the reason is its inability to create for them a sufficiently compelling alternative to exit. And I think we're getting towards the end here. This is March. Has load shedding caused you to reconsider voting for the ANC? And this is only ANC supporters, voters, 45% say yes and 45% say no, and the ANC knows this because we told them that you're in trouble. And they agree that they're in trouble. And I don't know if I think just on the side and beyond this evening, load shedding I think is relatively easy to solve. Just fix the power plants that are broken and refit coal and you're on your way. But whether that's going to, load shedding is not difficult. And the political opposition gets it so wrong when they say that it's such a difficult challenge to solve. You're just giving Ramaphosa a get out of jail free card. So it's easy to solve load shedding. Just do proper maintenance, put proper coal into coal stations, buy enough diesel for the time being. Lights will be on again. Lastly, Cape Town. I just wanted to add this one in. The demographics, the DA in the Cape wins around 55% of the vote. And it's been edging its way, just not upwards. Let's say it's not rising for the last decade. It seems to be falling a little bit. And I think there's a tactical mistake that's being made by both the ANC and the DA to think that the coloured voters, which is the big demographic split between the ANC and the DA, if one day a new politician arrives that captures coloured opinion, the DA loses the Cape. And there's a very interesting chap by the name of Gayton McKenzie, who I have spent some time with. And people are quick to say it's absurd that Mackenzie would try and govern anything. He knows exactly what politics is about. He's working really hard. His understanding of issues, economics, global events, is really good. He loves getting out of bed in the morning to do this. And he is a factor to bear in mind, because I think, I'd say to you, which, and some of the DA are here this evening, I don't think the DA can on its own hold the Western Cape anymore. And it's going to have to make a deal with the up-and-comers if it wishes to do that. So even everyone's watching the ANC collapse and fall away. And there's a sort of DA jewel in the crown in the Cape, and this idea that that will always remain so. Wouldn't be certain that that's necessarily the case. Yeah, and just lastly, if you take the opposition blocks together, 2019, 66 turnout, and let's do July 22, 66 turnout. Or let's do this one, March 2023, 66% turnout. We had the DA at 24, and we had the rest of the opposition bloc, this is Freedom Front, ACDP, the kind of moderate right of centre opposition, at about 15. So collectively, let's say we put them at about 40%. They're 10 points short. Those 10 points rest in that third of the ANC base that needs to be brought across. If that happens, these guys have a shot at national government. If they don't get that right, then we have other configurations that emerge after this election, the most likely of which is the ANC is back in power, probably in the low 50s, and if we're wrong on that, and it's down just below 40, or just above 45, there are a number of proxy parties that it can use, small partners, to get itself back in. So I think the ANC does another 5 years into 2029. We'll revisit all these issues in the 5 years up to that, and that's not a bad thing, and I'll close for you on that. Do not wish for the collapse of the ANC if you don't know what you're going to replace it with. Because we might have one shot at this. And the ANC is not a crazed fascist dictatorship. Its finance minister is pursuing a primary budget surplus. He's not going to get there, but he's trying. He's not printing money. Our political leaders, unlike the Venezuelans, are not in jail. We're not meeting in Hampstead this evening to discuss a fund to get John Steenhuisen out of prison. Those are real problems. Governments that print money to create inflation, to create populism. We don't have that. We have one shot at this because people trust in democracy. And if the government that is brought to power after the ANC's defeat is as hopeless as some of what we've seen from the broader opposition, and there's some amazing people in the opposition, very good people in the ANC too, try and govern well. If that's hopeless, people will lose their confidence in democracy, which they currently have in great measure. And if they lose their confidence in democracy, they can be swayed to populism. So even if the ANC still has a run, a term, who knows, maybe another one in power, don't try and stampede it out of power when you don't know what you're going to replace it with.
It's Sebastian Chatter from Upper Asian Capital. You mentioned Gates and Mackenzie. Can you elaborate a little more on the voting demographic behind him in terms of age, region, gender, and the like, and also in terms of trends, if you'll be able to elucidate any? Is he on the up, is he on the down?
Don't know yet. We're testing him at the moment. Great detail in the track of a supersized sample. We'll have that about
4 weeks' time. We're doing it in order to test this whole Western Cape thesis, that the Western Cape is vulnerable. And if you think from a DA perspective, Western Cape, there's a national assumption, the Western Cape is sort of sorted. And it will be the last sort of refuge. And it will be a great emerging market, which it should be for the next 20 or 30 years. But its politics, I think, is more vulnerable than is understood. To date, he started very small. In which election did he get so many votes? The local one, no. He surged in a local election. I think up to that point, he hadn't really had much of a ground game. He hadn't really been working hard at this, properly on the ground political working. If he begins to do that, then he potentially is very hard to beat in the Cape. And there have been some recent by-election results. I think Swellendam where if you go look in the Swellendam result, he made an effort at Swellendam, crushed the DA there. So in this world of PR where the biggest parties have 30%, the winner is not going to be the biggest political party anymore. And there's actually some liability in being the biggest party, because you've got all sorts of diverse supporters and members making demands. The winner is going to be the best deal makers, to strike deals between and across parties. And that's a lesson that I don't think has yet fully sunk in on any side of the equation.